My name is Lionel Ferrer. I'm a teacher trainer for Global Language Training. I'm here speaking to Harold Bratovich, the Academic Director.
Hi Lionel, how are you?
Very well, thank you. In this video we're going to talk a little bit about the type of situations that teachers are likely to encounter when they're actually out there in the classroom. What are the main types of situations they're likely to find?
Well, I think they're going to find all kinds of different situations. They're going to find students who are very welcoming, happy to see them. They're also going to find sometimes hostile situations where students are not very happy to see the teacher. They're going to find students who are very eager to learn and happy to learn. And they're going to find situations where students are forced to learn. So you're really going to find different settings, depending on the age group as well. If you're teaching young learners, they're usually very happy about learning. When you teach teenagers, things start to change. They go into their adolescence and those painful years. And it's harder on the teacher and the students as well. And when you teach adults, so you're going to find different, depending on the age groups, different situations that they're going to find.
When teaching children, it's very important, do you think, to teach them the relevance of learning a language. They might be living in their own country and not understand the relevance of learning English, which then is a foreign language.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we need to, when we're teaching very young learners, is we need to really make it fun. That for them is going to be something fun, because they still don't understand that the whole concept of English being lingua franca and how important it is, the importance of learning English as a foreign language or as a second language. They really don't understand all these concepts. They just know that they're in a classroom, that they're listening to someone speaking in a different language that they don't understand. So everything has to be fun and enjoyable. Although you still have to be strict and demanding, you have to make it fun, because with children they still don't understand that whole concept of English being important for their lives, etc. Even for teenagers sometimes. I found that they still don't understand, why am I learning this language? Why am I forced to be here? I don't want to be here. And you really have to teach them sometimes and make them aware of the importance of the language in their lives.
Yes, and with that, of course, discipline can become a problem in the classroom.
Yeah.
Have you got any experiences?
Well, I think, when I've traveled abroad and I've taught abroad, I've talked to school principals and directors who say that they would rather have a real good classroom manager rather than someone who is a great grammarian, who is excellent at grammar or knows the language really, really well. Because they need someone who is able to control their students. Discipline, I think, is a very important issue in the classroom. Classroom management is extremely important, and discipline being one of those things related to classroom management. So, I've had all kinds of situations in the classroom where students are disrespectful to me or disrespectful to other students. I've had situations where you have to send the student to the discipline coordinator or the director. I've had students fight in the classroom because there was a problem with one particular girl, and they actually started fighting, and I had to break them apart. So you're going to find different situations. It's not the norm. You're not going to find that all the time, but you may encounter some of those discipline issues. The class clown. I've always had a class clown.
That goes with adults as well.
You would, yeah, definitely, yeah. Not just with teenagers or kids, definitely with adults. There's always a class clown, and with adults it's kind of funny, because maybe when they were in school they weren't that funny, and now they're a lot more confident, and they now pretend to be the class clown. But I think it's our jobs to control our students and to let them know, look, I'm in control, I am the teacher, we're here to reach our objective, and you have to follow you have to follow and do what I tell you to do. And never allow students to take over your lesson or to take over your class.
There's been an enormous increase in learning English for business purposes recently. How does that affect the teacher? What is the difference when you're teaching business?
Well, one thing that I'd like to say first of all is you don't have to have a background in business to teach business English, because a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to go into business English because I don't have a business background or a business major, or didn't go to the university to study business. You don't need it. You do need to have, we go back to lesson planning, preparing your lessons well and learning about them. Now the good thing is, going back a little bit about, going back to course books, is there are course books already designed based on business English that will help you to teach these lessons effectively. But it's definitely something that, because of this globalization and free trade agreements among nations, now business English has become really important. And as teachers, we're going to be called more and more for those types of jobs. And they're well-paying jobs.
Yes.
So don't be afraid, I would say, to take on that job. Just prepare lessons really well, look for material, appropriate material, and do it, because you'll learn along the way. They don't expect you to be a business expert. They just expect you to be a good teacher.
Basically, you're teaching them to communicate.
Right.
Just the same as in any other lesson, but they're communicating possibly between a Japanese businessman and an Italian businessman.
Exactly. Yes. And also they already know all this information in their native language. So they are already businessmen or already have a business background. So they know all this information in their native language. They just need to learn it in a foreign language. But they don't expect you to have an MBA or to be a business expert. If you do, great. If you don't, that's fine. But I would say do it. You can do it.
One of the other possible situations teachers might find themselves in is teaching in a multilingual class. If, for example, they're teaching in an English class in London, for example, they will have students from every nationality, or they might move abroad and teach in another country where they'll be speaking all the same language. What are the different challenges between these situations?
Well, I always say, well, one good thing it could be if you speak the native language. If you speak the native language, then you understand where your students are coming from.
Is that a good thing?
I think it can be a positive thing, but it can also be a negative thing. Once your students know that you speak the language, then then they'll try and speak to you in the native language because they know that you speak it as well. What I always suggest to new teachers is speak English and don't use the native language. But I think the challenges are always going to be, it's difficult when you have a classroom with people who come from different cultural backgrounds, who have a different language, and sometimes religion as well. And so it is challenging when you have these multicultural, multilingual classrooms, because then your students sometimes don't have a lot in common. And it can be quite challenging. But I can also say the same thing when you're teaching a classroom with students who all speak the same language, because then they can easily communicate, and then you can have classroom management issues.
Yes.
So I don't think one's easier than the other. I just think it's different, and they both have their own challenges.
Yes, I think it can be a mistake to try and oblige them or to make them speak in a monolingual class, to make them speak in English. So that can cause resentment between the students and the teacher when you start placing rules.
Yes, although I always try to keep my students from speaking their native language in the classroom. And I think I make it mandatory. And sometimes I'll even say, okay, if you speak, Spanish, or if you speak Chinese, you'll have to, you'll have a penalty, and you have to give X amount of pennies or whatever. So I always try and look for ways to stop my students from using the native language.
In multilingual or multicultural classes, you get the problem with different different cultures, people who are used to they have different personalities because of their culture.
Right.
For example, the quiet Japanese person sitting next to the noisy Italian. How do you deal with these?
Well, I think Asian students are always challenging because Asian students tend to be, not all, but they all tend to be, because of their culture, very reserved, very quiet in the classroom. And their culture dictates that the teacher is the central authority figure and everything revolves around the teacher, and they're just observing, taking in information, taking notes and learning. And so it's challenging to get them to communicate because it's sort of breaking away from that traditional way of learning. That can be challenging, but I think by doing lots of pair work and lots of activities and making them aware that the English language classroom is totally different than from any other subject area, that they're actually learning in their native language. So I think it's just a matter of making them aware. Now, it was a lot more difficult 10, 15 years ago or 20 years ago. I think today they're aware because they're learning English from a very early age, and that's making it easier.
And they have access to TV programs,
Yes.
To English culture.
Exactly, yeah. And so that's changing things. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Lana.